Have you ever been in a situation where you thought you were really fully prepared for a meeting, and then you found yourself in that meeting wondering, what the heck are these people talking about? It was like they were speaking some kind of foreign language, and they spoke about the company's JP index, the fact that the CRM was not meeting the HR standards that were referenced by the HR S&M think tank. Have I lost you? No wonder. It's crap. It's all jargon. Well, on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, we are going to examine what happens to your leadership and engagement when you use jargon. Welcome to Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty Leadership Interview Series. I'm your host, Dov Barron, founder of Full Monty Leadership. If you're a new listener or new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in, we're about to go full Monty. And if you're a regular, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 listeners and a whole bunch of other categories, giving us millions of downloads. We really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing the show with everybody that you know. And remember to always keep us relevant. We need you to do that. So get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. Have you been around those folks who just love using jargon? You know, they have terms like leveraging core competencies or opening the kimono. This is one of my favorites. Opening the kimono to strategic partners. Sounds like a porn movie, but there we go. They use acronyms like the CSR or the EPS or the NOB factor. Now, I only made up one of those. You can work out which one it was in a minute. They use these acronyms, and you can feel your brain kind of scrambling through the words, looking for words that might fit into those letters. And your head feels like it's going to explode. Well, today, my guest is the master of language declutter. He is the executive coach at a Toronto-based, and he's the president and CEO of the Humphreys Group. This is a company that has offices in Toronto, here in Vancouver, in Calgary, and in Mexico City, because I guess everybody got sick of being cold. He serves clients around the world. The Humphreys Group teaches people to communicate as inspiring leaders and express ideas that move others into action without the jargon. Bart Egnal contributes as leading publications such as the Huffington Post, the Globe and Mail, and Prophet Magazine. Bart is the author of Leading Through Language, Choosing Words That Influence and Inspire. Please put your hands together and welcome Bart Egnal. Woo! The crowd goes wild. Hey Bart, welcome, mate.
Hey, it's great to be here, Dov, and thanks so much for having me. I love that you were already able to work S&M into your introduction, and and a great example of with the unintended uses of jargon. Well, I think we have to clarify for people that this is in fact a discussion about business language and not 50 Shades of Grey. Yeah, well, but a great point. Next thing we'll be talking about servicing the customer and penetrating the market.
There you go. So, according to the S&M, we've got to service the customer, and we've got to really penetrate the market, and there's nothing we mean by that.
That's right.
It's ridiculous.
I know, and this kind of jargon is everywhere. You talk about, opening the kimono, you talk about leveraging our core competencies and all the pursue synergistic benefits. For 15 years, I've been coaching executives and working with organizations on how to communicate from a leadership standpoint, and one thing is clear is that people are sick of the jargon, but also can't stop using it.
To me, that's an interesting point, right? Because I hear the same thing. Mm-hmm. I don't like all this jargon, and yet I find myself even doing it. I find myself going, stop it! I don't like it.
Right.
Here's my point, and let you because you're the expert. I want to hear from you. But for me, I think that there's something I speak about called assumptive knowledge. Mm-hmm. And that is where you assume that somebody knows what you know. And the reason for that, by the way, psychologically, is because you know it so well, it becomes quote-unquote common knowledge, which means it's common to you. Mm-hmm. And so you then project that onto other people and think that they should know it, and of course they don't. So we do this assumptive language with people around things. Why is it you think that we don't like it, we want to stop it, yet we're so almost addicted to it?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you touched on something very important when you talk about assumptive language, and it's it is it's one of the reasons, if I take a step back with jargon, I set out to reconcile these 2 points that you made. One that, I hate it. Why am I leveraging? Why am I, unlocking my synergies? Why am I going to blow this out in the white paper and take it out in the black box rather than just saying I'm going to come up with an idea? So people share your frustration, and they also, they get to the business world and they think, I have to use it. I have to use it to be taken seriously. Right. And the reality is there's truth to both of those. And so when I went into writing the book, I sought to answer how these kind of seemingly contradictory realities exist. Mm-hmm. And I would say the short answer is that not all jargon is created equally. Okay. And that because there's so many articles out there that just rip on jargon because it's easy to rip on. Mm-hmm. But the reality is there are some benefits to it, and it's our pursuit of those benefits that cause us to keep feeling like we have to use it. The problem is those benefits are a bit overvalued, and the consequences are more negative than we think. Right. So instead of thinking about jargon as either good or bad, mm-hmm. think of it on a spectrum. Right. And at one end of the spectrum, we have very useful jargon. On the other hand, we have very damaging jargon to your cause of leading and influencing. Right. And I know your practice is all about authentic leadership and reaching people and being able to provide them with the clarity of who you are and what you believe and why they should make the choice to follow you rather than just do what you say. So think about language and jargon as either helping or hindering you from doing that. So on the help end of the spectrum, when you and I, jargon can save time. If you and I both know what a term means, so when you, for example, talk about the full Monty, for your listeners who know what that means, it's tremendously powerful because immediately you save the time because you both get it. And that's when you think about acronyms, when you think about jargon in business, a lot of people, when there's that common knowledge, it cuts through and allows people to go fast. Right. Then we get into jargon where it creates a common bond and a common culture. Every industry, every profession, every company has its own jargon, its own terminology. Right. And you're in if you can speak that language. And if you interview someone, if you're an engineer and you're interviewing someone for an engineering job, you want to know that they literally speak your language. And jargon's the way we assess that. So those are benefits of jargon. It creates this kind of shared community. And that's why people continue to use it, because of the desire to derive those benefits. But so for me, I would then say, so the way we'd evaluate it, I would suggest might be on context, meaning that is it appropriate language in this context? I swear, just a little more than a drunken sailor. Just a little. Because you're authentic. but at the same time, the amount that I swear is in the context of the communication that I have at the given time. Right. And I would even put it forward just to say that swearing could be considered considered a jargon. So I think there's a context that you've got to say. Again, as you said, if I'm an engineer and I'm interviewing an engineer, there's a context for engineering jargon that will tell me, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. Right. But I think that, here's the thing, you tell me what you think. I think that a lot of time on the other end of that scale is that people use jargon to try and look smart. Absolutely. Yeah, and so let's look at the next two pieces of the spectrum are ones you've talked about. The third, so we have, it saves you time, it creates a common bond. Then the third is what I call assumption jargon. Right. And this is where you know what it means, but you make the assumption that the audience does, and it's an inaccurate or unfounded assumption. Absolutely. So you had been mentioning that earlier. You think, it's contextual. And this happens quite frequently. I'll ask someone to define it, and they can, but they just don't think to do it. Then we get to, so that's kind of an innocuous mistake that can still diminish your ability to reach your audience. Then you get to what I call inflation jargon. And this is what you were speaking about. People sometimes use jargon to sound smarter than they actually are, or to make their ideas seem more grandiose. So, instead of using something, I can utilize it. Instead of, coming up with an idea, I'm unlocking my human capital to leverage our key strategic value proposition going forward, right? And so this is where jargon can puff things up. And just as jargon allows us to create a connection for you to evaluate my competency, so too can it almost be like a cloak of authenticity, a cloak of effectiveness, and it can fool people in the short term. And so, yeah, that you're absolutely right on that front.
Yeah, I think you just said something there that I think is really important too, and I've discussed this on many of the shows. I've been speaking about authenticity for 30 years. It's now the new cool word.
It is. It's right? A new jargon, new piece of jargon.
It's a new, and it is new jargon, because I will say to people, "Okay, tell me what authenticity is. Mm-hmm. Tell me
silence.
What it is."
Dead right? Silence. I'll bet.
Because they can't answer that, right? And so I'm also very political, and I make a lot of political commentary, and I have another political show. And I say, okay, so why do people like Donald Trump? Mm-hmm. And they say, well, he's very authentic. Okay. Mm-hmm. But you just told me that authentic was good.
Right.
So let me just fill you in. Adolf Hitler, very authentic.
Right.
Narcissists, very authentic. Mm-hmm. They don't hide that they're narcissists. That's mm-hmm. who they are. So right. What is authenticity? Authenticity is actually making sure that you're not bullshitting, that the words mm-hmm. and the actions match who you are. Mm-hmm. That could be very dark, and it could be very light, and it needs to be paying attention again to context. Mm-hmm. And does this fit? Because if I want to vote for somebody authentic, which, you know, as a voter I might want to do, I also have to evaluate authentic about what? Because if you insulted right. every race and the other gender, and you've insulted everybody, well, I'm kind of not that guy. That's not the authenticity right. I'm looking for.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, people do respond to authenticity and dislike kind of packaging, and I think it's important if we take a step back for your listeners to understand what, you know, in what purpose should we be thinking about authenticity. So I come at it. The work I do and the work my company does is exclusively focused on leadership,
right,
and leadership communication. So politics, you know, you talk about Trump as authenticity, is a different game. And what Trump is doing is very different from what a corporate executive should do in terms of their intention of communicating. So I think when you think about leadership, you know, my view, I'll define my term, you know, given that I'm pointing that a leader to me is not someone who has a big title or who has a certain number of people reporting to him, and or someone who has power that is bestowed upon them. A leader is someone who inspires others to act, yes. and is able and inspires others to act by conveying thinking that others say, I believe in that and I want to act. That to me is the sole defining criteria. And so what that means is no matter what seniority you are, what role you're in, you have the opportunity to lead. So if we look at that definition, then let's look at authenticity through that lens.
Right.
Authenticity, and I have a chapter in the second half of my book on how to use authentic language.
Right.
I say the language of leadership is authentic. And so what I mean there is, you know, you do want to bring yourself and your belief in your ideas forward with total clarity and conviction.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that that authenticity is a license to say whatever you think. It doesn't mean that authenticity is a license to use whatever kind of language you think. Authenticity, you know, we all, you know, put on different outfits depending on where we're working, right? You know, we're both professionally attired because we're in a professional context. But I'm not going to wear a suit when I'm having dinner with my 4-year-old and my wife. So language is the same way. You know, we bring professional language that's still genuine, that's authentic, but it has to be with the intention of inspiring others. And so you mentioned one of the topics I tackle in that chapter is swearing.
Yes.
There's a great book, one of my favorite books as an entrepreneur, is The Hard Thing About Hard Things. It's by a guy named Ben Horowitz out of Silicon Valley. Great read. Because if you know, as someone who likes authenticity, it's a real no BS look at the tough work of starting a business. And it was very inspiring to me. Even though I start the Humphrey Group as the owner and person who runs it, a lot hit home. But there's one chapter where Horowitz talks about his swearing. Mm-hmm. And there was a revolt in the company because people were sick of his swearing. And so he's very open about this, which is why I love his writing. And so they come to me and say, you know, Ben, you're making people very uncomfortable with his swearing, with all the swearing, and I think you should stop. Mm-hmm. And so he kind of goes through this introspection where he says, oh, you know, and his conclusion is, I realized I couldn't stop swearing, and so I kind of decided I wasn't going to. And I thought to myself, it's a bit of a cop-out, because the leader's goal should be to reach his or her people. Yes. And so you have to choose language that serves that goal. And so being authentic, picking language that really reflects who you are, but simultaneously allows you to reach people the right way.
Yeah, so let's go deeper into that, because that's a great point. Because I agree with you, and I would say one other thing on top of that, and that's this. Are those your people?
Are they your... Exactly.
See, for me, if I'm in Ben's place, and they go, people are upset because you're using this language and upsets them, I'm not saying I would, but I might go, well, these are not my people. Yeah. Because I can tell you that in my writing and my videos and my production, I put out stuff that pisses people off. Right. I know that, and that's good. I'm all right with that. Yeah. But if I'm trying to constantly move and manipulate so that I'm not offending, I may get more gray area people, but I'm never going to get people who are fiercely loyal, as my book says. Fierce loyalty is about authenticity. Right. So from my point of view, I agree with you. I think leadership is about influence, and it's about impact, and it's about moving people in the most authentic possible way. And then part of that is also understanding that it's okay to walk away from things or people, and so there's that's an interesting piece with those two things.
Oh, I totally agree with you. And you're not going to influence and inspire everyone, and you have to decide as you said, who are your people? Who is your audience that you want to reach? Yeah. And if Horowitz had said in that chapter, I didn't care at all if anyone walked out the door, that would have been fine. I think what he said was, these people were very important to me, and I didn't particularly care to change myself. So hey, more power to you. But I think in both situations, what he was saying, what you're saying, the key that both of you are identifying is self-awareness and consciousness. And in the book, and you've shown your book, so I'll show mine.
Make sure you hold it up there. So, leading through language, choosing words that influence and inspire, and you can find it on Wiley. For those of you who are looking for it, Wiley Books.
And it's also available on Amazon and across the country at Barnes & Noble.
Cool.
But one of the things we were talking about, reaching your audience and doing so intentionally. And in my experience, when we start working with executives and we start working with managers, what's remarkable is how little conscious thought goes into communication. Absolutely. Typically, the bulk of communication in the business world is focused on one thing, and that's an information exchange. Yep. People say, I have to present the results, or I'm going to give an update on this capital project, or I'm going to talk to you about our HR strategy. And I say, who are the people you're trying to reach, and to what end? And it's remarkable. People will respond, I want to share this content with them. Why? So they know why. And it's, maybe if they know it, they'll buy in and provide the funding. And so the real starting point is exactly as you described. It's thinking about, who is my real audience? What do I want to inspire them to do? Yeah. What message do I need to deliver to them that fits with what I believe? And then what words, what language do I choose to do that? So I'm glad to hear you talk about that.
Well, one of the things I talked about in my book, in my last book, was, I have something called the Authentic Speaker Academy for Leadership, and I teach people to speak. And one of the things I say in there is, nobody gives a shit about your information.
Yeah, it's true.
And they give less of a shit about your information than they ever did, and here's why. Because if I want information, I can go on Google and I spend the rest of my life reading about that subject. And
there's more than ever.
You'd never be able to cope with the amount of information. So people don't give a shit about your information, so it better be something else that you're delivering, that you wrap the information in. That's it. So for me, understanding that is understanding that then A, it's about relationship, and B, it's about you showing up in that relationship. If your language is jargonized and complex, it just makes it too difficult for people to connect with you. Right. And if they can't make that connection, and the example I give is, two people walk in to do a presentation. It's exactly the same presentation, exactly the same results. So here's all the data. They're going to deliver the same data. but this one walks in and shares something very personal about themselves, and this one doesn't. Who are you doing business with?
That's right. You're bang on. No one, I love that. No one cares about your information. You should have a sticker that you put on people's presentation when they dump. There's even an expression, show up and throw up, used to describe content. So what do people really care about? To me, the fundamental definition of effective speaking is, do you change beliefs? Does someone walk away believing, not thinking, but believing something different, or with a greater degree of conviction and certainty?
Stop.
Yeah.
Say that again, because that was the nugget there.
Yeah. So the most important thing, if you want to lead when you speak, get your audience to walk away believing something new or believing something with a greater degree of certainty.
That's it. That's it. That's what it comes down to.
I totally agree.
It's not let me share my ideas, because nobody gives a crap.
No one cares.
I'm too busy. I've got 4 minutes, and I'm still chewing the sandwich I had from lunch. So
right.
I don't really have time. So nobody cares. And that idea, that concept of going, this is about shifting beliefs, deepening beliefs or shifting beliefs. I think I just think you nailed it.
Yeah, and I
don't know that you can do that with jargon.
Yeah, and so you think about jargon through that lens. Jargon makes it harder to do that, because you think about the clarity of thinking, the clarity that you need to bring to a belief. Why put a whole bunch of linguistic crap in the way of that? You look at a guy like Steve Jobs. I mean, I watched that iPhone keynote in 2009 when he introduced that.
Right.
And I remember being mesmerized. I watched it over and over again. And I was an avid BlackBerry user at the time. And I watched him like, shoot, when do I get one of these?
Right.
And you look at the technology that went into that, and you know what? He didn't talk at all about that.
Nope.
He didn't. He talked about working on revolutionary products, and in his career, he had a chance to be part of a few, and that this was the latest. And you walked away believing that something was special about how this was going to change how we communicate. So it's a great example of a guy who could have talked about information ad nauseum, and he didn't. He talked about what he believed.
Yeah, and it is a great example of just that it isn't about all the bits. It was about, as you said, it was about him making a ding in the universe. It was about it was about shifting the way we communicate in such a way, and you said it. You said this was something great, and so why did I buy the iPhone? Well, the initial one, I think because we wanted to be part of something great.
Right.
That was the belief shift.
That's why people line up.
Yeah.
You don't line up for a phone. You line up to be part of a way of being and communicating. And
that's what loyalty is, right? It's
yeah.
just like you said, it's getting people to believe or deepen a belief. Then they're engaged, then they're loyal towards that. And like you said, nobody's lining up to pay $1,000 or whatever it is for one of these things.
No.
Right? There's lots of competitors on the market.
Absolutely. That look identical.
And some say are even better.
Yeah, and so you take that idea of changing beliefs and then transpose it to the business world. And it's the most important thing that we teach executives, because they are drowning in content, and they are told that they have to present these 50 slide decks that would they're like, bricks that would just knock you out if you had to hear them. And so we always start with, yeah, but what do you believe? What do you really believe? If you could have this room walk away with the same degree of conviction, what would it be? And it takes a while, for your listeners. The first point I'd make is start asking yourself that question before you speak. Start asking yourself, what do I believe that my audience does not yet believe or needs to believe?
Yeah.
And be able to write it down in one sentence. I'll often have our clients say, complete the sentence, I firmly believe that. Like if I said it to you, for listeners who are new on the podcast, and you had to leave them with one belief, I firmly believe that, what would it be?
I would say, I firmly believe that who you are is far greater than anything you've ever expressed. It is your soul, and not all the clothes you wear as identity.
Now I'm intrigued. Now I want to know more. I mean, that's far more fascinating and engaging. And really, by having that belief up front and so clearly expressed, you earn the right to keep my attention.
Right. And I think that's a nugget, right, folks? I mean, get this stuff, right? Write this down. Don't let this bypass. I know that many of us listen to podcasts in the car, or we listen with this. Like, pull the frick over. Get a pen out. Write it on your phone. Do whatever you need to do. But stop and get that. I mean, that for me was another jewel. It's like, hold on a second. What do I firmly believe that they don't believe yet that I believe they should believe? Right?
Yeah,
So, and I would go further, and you tell me, because this may be in your process.
Go for it.
But I would say, so I just answered with my answer, and then I would say, well, why do you believe that?
Now you're getting to structure. Now you're getting to how you argue it. Because if you have something that challenges thinking, that's going to be the question. Well, why do you believe that? Why should I believe it? Because I don't believe it yet. And I think the way you put it, not something they don't believe yet, is important. Too many messages and too much language in the business world is just platitudinous. They're empty statements that no one would disagree with. I mean, I've listened to so many. Oh, our employees are our most important asset. They walk in and out the door every day.
Now.
Yeah, we're committed to your development and your success. Well, who isn't? Because so they are messages, but no one would ever disagree with them, and so it just doesn't change thinking for people. You've got to push people. I mean, we are inundated these days with messaging, information. So to really reach someone on a human level, you've got to have something that you are fervently behind and that pushes people to think differently. Pushes them sometimes even in a way that is, challenges them aggressively. And I think that's why, say what you will about Trump, positive or negative, but he engages an audience. And someone like Jeb, who just dropped out, doesn't. He didn't to the degree that he needed to. And so people want to be engaged by those who try and lead them in all walks of life. And so that it's really crucial that you do that.
Well, I think it was Seth Godin who said that we need more leaders, but most people are afraid to lead, that it's a rare position. Yeah. And as a result of that, we often have bad leaders because people will step up to lead who are not really qualified or caring or compassionate or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
But I agree with you. I think that people want to believe in something else. I mean, as we talked about earlier, the Bernie Sanders, the Donald Trump, they're not politics as normal. They're not politics as usual. And it is that, so how many people are now saying, you know what? Maybe a socialist Democrat is the way to go. Yeah. I've never thought about that. I would never have believed that. I'm very anti-socialist, and now I listen to Bernie, and he actually gives a crap.
Right.
First politician who gives a crap. Maybe I do believe that. Right. I spoke to a lady this morning who is a Republican who has just registered as a Democrat because of Bernie.
And what both of them have done well is they've really been audience-centric. They understand the issues that matter, and they tailor their messaging so that the voters feel that, or the prospective voters feel that they're speaking to them. That's so it's key. And let's take it back to leadership in the business world. When you're communicating, you need to think about that audience, and if you know what beliefs you have, the next step is that you want to convey to them. Well, the next step is to figure out what beliefs they have. A lot of an audience analysis I see is, oh, well, they're this level or they know this. But real audience analysis is about analysis of belief. What do they believe and why do they believe it coming in? I can't tell you how often the answer is, I don't know. And I'll say to the client, well, if you don't know what they believe in coming in, you can't ask them yet to adopt a new belief. You've got work to do.
Again, I love it when somebody like yourself is on my show and hits people on the head with something that's like, I think the term in French is synonyme. It's right under their freaking nose, but you can't see it, right? And that's simple. I understand the marketing, the psychology of marketing, and all those things. I mean, okay, well, look at the pain and what's the problem. Yeah, okay, those are valuable pieces. But that question, that one right there, what does your audience presently believe? I think that 99% out of 100 people would not have a freaking clue what their prospective audience actually believes.
No. And so what they're hoping is that, oh, I'll just dump all this content on them. They'll synthesize it and magically reach the same conclusion that I have. When the reality is the audience's beliefs, which are probably going to be different, are usually well-founded. Oh, they believe that we shouldn't move to this new business model because we won't be able to better serve our customer. Well, why would they believe that? Well, we tried that 6 months ago and there's an utter failure. So they maybe have some validity in that.
Right.
So, taking that time, and sometimes you have to ask them. You literally have to ask them, what do you believe about this change, this project, this initiative, that person, this job, and why? And people appreciate that, and then they're ready to hear your message. Heck, I've had clients go in and do that work and say, you know what, my message needs to change. Well, based on what I've learned, I can't in good conscience argue this with fervent belief anymore. So it's so crucial to go through that process rather than reaching for the PowerPoint, rather than getting the memo, because it's foundational to connecting on that human level as a leader.
Yeah, I think if you started out, I because I'm a speaker, I think in this way. Mm-hmm. You start out your presentation with, here's what people believe. Here's what you may believe. Here's what people in this, this world, this context, whatever it is, believe. Here's what my research has shown people believe. And people go, and you go, and here's why that's a myth. What?
You're hooked.
Like, come on now,
Right.
And see, and I think that most speakers, whether they're, I'm being clear, whether those speakers are people like me who speak for a living, or whether those speakers are the CEO or the CFO or the C-suite member, right, you still got to speak.
Absolutely.
And I think that they're afraid to do that because they're afraid that, again, they're afraid of polarity. And I always say, you can't lead from the fence.
That's right.
You've got to push people off the fence, and it means you've got to stand on their side too, and you're going to piss some people off, and that's okay.
Right.
As long as you know what it, and I would say, you've got to know what you're fighting for. If you don't know what you're fighting for, you're dead in the water.
And that's where that starting point of what do you fervently believe is so key. Because let's look at the alternative, which is the majority of communication, the information communication. First of all, it's safe. No one can argue with information. Hey, look, it's on the slide. It's accurate. You're safe. It's non-confrontational. Maybe at the end, the audience will reach the conclusion you magically wanted them to reach, and you won't have to challenge them. So it's a very safe way to communicate, but it's a fundamentally uninspired one because you're outsourcing the work of inspiration to your audience. You're hoping and praying that they synthesize it and reach it themselves. It takes, as you said, a lot of courage. Leadership communication, in my view, is a full contact sport.
I agree.
You've got to reach out and challenge those people to adopt new beliefs. And guess what? They're going to push back. But here's the key. If you care enough about your idea, you should actually welcome that challenge.
Absolutely.
Because them pushing back is saying, hey, I'm listening. I'm open to being convinced. I'm willing to hear differently. If you can show it to me. You may have to go through the ringer, but you've already decided in advance that that person or those people are worth it.
Yeah,
so
it also gives you clarity of your own message too. Right? It brings you back. It's like, there's certain things that I've gone, I got this, and then I've got challenged and I've gone, whoa, I really got to go away and take another look at this because that was a point I never thought about.
That's right,
and it's vital.
You're right, and so you've got to do the work. You talk about clarity of message. This can't be something that you do on the way to your next meeting. The best leaders are what we call scripting themselves constantly. And initially, scripting is a literal process. It's not a script that you read, but imagine every Monday or Sunday night, look at your week ahead and say, what's the idea that I want to convey this week that I believe in? And who are the audiences? And what do they believe? And you just spend that time jotting down that main idea and the proof points you have, and then you don't read it, but it's front of mind that week.
Right.
And gradually what happens is scripting yourself is a skill. You build muscle memory and you internalize it. So, we'll work with executives who are doing investor relations road shows. And in their mind, they've carried scripts for all the answers to tough questions that they anticipate. And we've role-played them in advance. We've done mock, Q&A, we've done videotaping, and so they're pre-scripted. Right. And you know, the people who look to be the most natural communicators in the world have often worked unnaturally hard to get that way. So you've got to put the work in.
As Michael Port once said, you've got to be rehearsed enough to be able to be off the cuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
You know, I've got a friend who is a speaker also. You know, we've both been speaking for 30 years plus, and he is the guy who rehearses every word. I mean, he rehearses the think about that. I mean, you know, he rehearses it all.
Right.
And he says to me, I don't know how you do it, because I don't rehearse that stuff at all. And I was at the other end of the scale, which is, I'm going to go out and talk about this, and that's it. And that was the end of my rehearsal. I knew my subject well enough. But what I've learned over all the years is that I do need that structure. One of my things I teach my speakers is, structure sets you free.
Yes,
you rehearse the structure to lean on, and you know it so well that you can then ad-lib inside of that structure and allow the authentic communication to flow through from that, instead of going off on tangents with people.
And you can also be much more precise. So in the one of the chapters in the language of leadership, and you know, I'll just hold up again for anyone who's new to the show, but leading through language. You know, in the second half of the book, I outline 11 ways that you can use the language of leadership, and one is to be concise. And you will, there is so much excess verbiage among speakers, and some of it's, you know, the ums and the ahs and the filler words, but a lot of it is just redundant words. So, you know, just to sum up, and on the go forward basis, and a lot of that exists because the thinking is not clear ahead of time. And so you can strip out a lot of that verbiage if you do that work up front to structure your thinking. It will also, as you said, allow you to then freeform as you need while sticking to the main ideas. I mean, Martin Luther King was writing, you know, his seminal, you know, I Have a Dream speech. He was working on it that morning.
Yes.
And so there's structure is key, and everyone will have their own style. You know, you're more freeform. Your friend is more meticulous, but both the commonality there, both of you are successful because you invest the time ahead of time, so you can be present in the moment.
Well, you know, you brought up Martin Luther King's speech, and this is one of the things that most people don't know. So, you know, like you said, he was, and that's, you know, you can read that he was actually writing it the morning of delivery. But what people don't know is that was the 8th time he delivered it.
Right.
Right? He delivered it to audiences 8 times prior to that. That was just the most finished one.
That's right.
With the largest audience, so it's the one we remember. But he did rehearse it, and he did know, you know, what those I Have a Dream bits were.
Yeah.
You know, that the Jew and the Gentile, etc., those pieces that, you know, we remember as this amazing oratory.
Right.
I mean, just outstanding. My inspiration to be a speaker when I was 10. Yeah, but it's always refining. Always refining. But as you said, and I think this is key, it's refining, but the center of that is, what do I believe?
That's right. And taking away, from a language standpoint, stripping away all the jargon that gets in the way of that belief, so your audience can hear it with its full power. Now, something else, just to stay on King, but what you can do with language that King did so well is you can bring that belief to life and reach your audience through the power of rhetoric. You know, a lot of people think of rhetoric as like something that's, you know, from 2,000 years ago in Greece, and it's true. You know, it was developed as really a guide to persuasion, to verbal persuasion. But what people don't often realize is that rhetoric is alive and well. You know, and so in the last chapter, I look at tools that great speakers use, like rhetorical questions. You know, Martin Luther King, how long? Not long, right? Because no lie can live forever. Repetition, you know, he repeated that device over and over. You know, metaphor, because, you know, we are moving to the land of the free. So rhetoric, I want executives, I want managers, I want people with no direct reports, people coaching in sports, people working in medicine to understand that language is a way to bring your ideas to life. And if you invest the time, if you make the ideas powerful in how you articulate them, you'll earn the right to be heard and create more believers.
I got to tell you, mate, this has been an outstanding show.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
Totally loved it.
I'm so glad that we could come together and open the kimono together. And,
and penetrate the market.
Leverage key strategic insight stuff.
And penetrate the market. Don't forget
exactly. All on a go-forward basis.
Exactly. But I can tell you, I'm not going to be leading from behind. It's been great having you here. Again, show the book to everybody. Okay, so leading through leadership. Leading through language, sorry. Choose words that influence and inspire. You could, like I said, you can find the book at Wiley. You can find it on Amazon, all those kinds of places. Tell people more about where they can find out more about you, your articles, where you write, the resources that you have.
You can go to our website, thehumphreygroup.com, and we have a lot of access to a lot of articles there. You can learn about how we work with executives and companies. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm THG_Bart. I tweet about leadership, communication, because I'm authentic about cycling, which is a passion of mine.
Cool.
And you can, if you'd love to work with us and work on your own speaking, by all means, get in touch.
Yeah, it's been great. I hope you stick around for a minute. I just want to say goodbye to everybody.
Appreciate you having me, Dov. Thanks so much.
It's been so great. And what I want to say to you guys as you're listening in is please make sure you take the time to actually listen to this, not just to hear the words. Take the time. Go back. There are some really, nuggets in here. I'm telling you, I am going to listen to this show, watch this show back myself. I'm going to take notes. Because sometimes I say stuff and oh, that was good. And I forgot it, right? So listen, again, take notes. Pay attention. There were some real genuine nuggets in here that didn't come with the jargon, that were very simple, very applicable, that will drive you home to what it is you need to do. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being on the show today and sharing the show with everybody know. If you are truly serious about the kind of positive disruption that builds a culture of fiercely loyal employees that not only lead, but also become evangelical about your organization and generate 10 times the engagement and productivity, reach out to me through fullmontyleadership.com. Thank you for joining us here on Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty Leadership Series. Again, my name is Dov Barron. I'm the founder of Full Monty. Well, thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Remember, as always, we need your help to stay relevant, keep us at the top. Get over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Until next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.